July 21st, 1999, Huntsville, Alabama. A NASA engineer stares at his monitor when lines of code start vanishing. Someone's inside their network right now. The screen shows files disappearing. Life support systems for the International Space Station. For 21 days, NASA keeps critical systems offline, while the International Space Station orbits without support. But NASA isn't the only target. At the Pentagon, classified emails are being siphoned. Nuclear defense protocols, downloading, military passwords, captured. But the attacker made one amateur mistake. He logged in from his home IP. The FBI traces it to a residential address in Miami. Agents gear up, expecting a foreign operative, a terrorist cell. They kick down the door to find a 15-year-old kid in his pajamas, still at his computer. Who was this teenager? And how did he breach the Pentagon? Jonathan James discovered computers at age 6 when his programmer father brought home a Gateway PC in 1989. Within months, the kid had memorized every menu, beaten every game, and started asking questions his dad couldn't answer. By age 8, Jonathan cracked his first password, the parental controls meant to limit his screen time. His father found him at 3 a.m., eyes bloodshot, fingers flying across the keyboard. The punishment? He got the computer confiscated for 2 weeks. But Jonathan's response changed everything. He broke into Palmetto Middle School's grading system, changed his C in math to an A, printed the modified report card, and slid it across the dinner table. "Give me back my computer," he said, "and my grades stay perfect." His mother's fork stopped midair. His father recognized the code on the printout, SQL injection, a technique most programmers didn't master until college. Their kid had just executed digital blackmail. They returned his computer that night. Online, Jonathan became comrade. No profile picture, no personal details, just raw skill that made veteran hackers take notice. In IRC channels like Hack the Planet and 2600, he absorbed techniques that textbooks wouldn't teach for another decade. Buffer overflows, packet sniffing, port scanning. One mentor, Handle Most Hate, taught him the cardinal rule. Never hit the same target twice. Always escalate. Jonathan took notes in a spiral notebook he kept locked in his desk drawer, notes that would later become evidence. His first real target came in February 1999. Bell South, the telecom giant serving 22 million customers across 9 states. Jonathan scanned their network for 3 nights straight, found an unpatched Solaris server running an outdated version of SendMail, and slipped inside. He navigated through customer databases, billing systems, internal emails. The company's entire southeastern communications infrastructure spread before him like an unguarded city. He downloaded nothing, changed nothing, left no trace except a single line in a log file that administrators wouldn't notice for 8 months. The penetration lasted 4 hours. Jonathan called it practice. But practice for what? At 15, Jonathan had already breached a Fortune 500 company that handled communications for millions. School felt pointless. Why study calculus when you could reprogram reality? His bedroom walls displayed no posters of athletes or musicians, just printouts of network diagrams and assembly code. While classmates worried about driver's permits, Jonathan studied declassified NSA documents about TEM/PEST shielding and Van Eck phreaking. He wasn't collecting baseball cards, he was collecting zero-day exploits. And late one June night, hunched over his custom-built Linux machine, he found the ultimate collector's item, an unsecured server with a .gov domain. The IP traced to Huntsville, Alabama. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just discovered NASA's front door. Would he try the handle? What would he find behind it? June 29th, 1999. Jonathan's scanner returned an IP address, 192.76.91.54. The reverse DNS lookup showed a weird domain, nasomp3.msfc.nasa.gov, Marshall Space Flight Center. His pulse jumped. NASA. The agency that put humans on the moon ran servers with telnet ports wide open and root passwords set to password 123. Jonathan couldn't believe it. He ran the scan 3 more times to be sure. Same result. NASA's security was weaker than his high school's. He crafted his entry carefully. First, a simple buffer overflow in the BIND DNS service gave him user-level access. From there, he escalated privileges using a local kernel exploit published just weeks earlier. Within 17 minutes, he owned root, the admin access, on 13 interconnected machines. No alarms triggered, no administrators noticed. NASA's own documentation, which he found on the compromised servers, showed these systems managed Environmental Control and Life Support Systems, ECLSS, for the International Space Station. The code controlled oxygen generation, carbon dioxide removal, water recovery, temperature regulation, everything keeping astronauts alive in the vacuum of space. Jonathan initiated the download at 11:43 p.m. His 56K modem pulled data at 5.2 kilobytes per second. The ECLSS source code comprised 3,471 files totaling 38 megabytes. At this speed, 2 hours minimum. He watched the progress bar creep forward, each percentage point representing code that NASA valued at $50,000. This wasn't some corporate database or phone records. This was the software barrier between astronauts and death. By 1:52 a.m., transfer complete. Jonathan had the entire ECLSS codebase on his hard drive. NASA's intrusion detection system finally noticed anomalies on July 7th, 8 days after Jonathan's infiltration. System Administrator James McCarthy spotted processes consuming unusual CPU cycles on the Mars Pathfinder support server. He traced the intrusion back through audit logs. Someone had installed a rootkit, created backdoor accounts, and exfiltrated data. McCarthy made the call that would cost NASA 3 weeks of downtime. Shut everything down. Now. Engineers disconnected 43 servers from the network. Mission-critical ISS operations moved to backup systems running on isolated machines. Every line of code required verification, 3.2 million lines across multiple systems. The International Space Station, orbiting at 17,500 miles per hour with 6 astronauts aboard, operated on emergency protocols while NASA searched for contamination. By the way, subscribe if you want to see more incredible true stories of teenage prodigies who outsmarted billion-dollar organizations. Because Jonathan's NASA hack was just the opening act. Meanwhile, Jonathan studied his prize. The ECLSS code revealed NASA's approach to fault tolerance, redundancy patterns, sensor calibration algorithms. But something bothered him. The code quality was terrible, deprecated functions, hard-coded values, comments in 3 different languages. NASA's million-dollar software looked like a college group project. "This is crap," he posted on IRC. "My Linux kernel has better error handling." Another hacker responded, "If NASA is this weak, imagine the Pentagon." Jonathan's fingers hovered over his keyboard. The Pentagon, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical defense. NASA had been embarrassingly easy. How much harder could the military be? What classified systems could a 15-year-old access from his bedroom? August 14, 1999. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency ran 847 servers across 17 locations. Jonathan started with their Dulles, Virginia facility, DTRA's main data hub connecting Fort Belvoir, Kirtland Air Force Base, and the Pentagon itself. The router, a Cisco 7206 VXR, still ran iOS version 11.1, 3 years out of date with 14 known vulnerabilities. Jonathan exploited a flaw Cisco had patched in 1997 that DTRA never bothered updating. One crafted packet later, he had enabled mode access. The Pentagon's nuclear defense network opened like a cheap padlock. But Jonathan wanted more than access. He wanted intelligence. On August 19th, he deployed a custom packet sniffer across DTRA's network backbone. Every data packet flowing through the Dulles router now copied itself to Jonathan's server. Email from defense.gov addresses. Login credentials for SIPR workstations. Classified memos about Y2K preparations for nuclear command systems. In 4 weeks, his sniffer captured 3,312 emails, 1,879 unique passwords, and 19 user accounts belonging to active military personnel, including Major Thomas Daniels, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes, and civilian contractor Michael Resinoff. Jonathan now possessed login credentials for computers inside the Pentagon's E-ring, the innermost corridor where Joint Chiefs planned America's defense strategy. September 3, 1999. Jonathan logged into Major Daniels' workstation using captured credentials. The desktop contained 1,247 files, threat assessments for North Korean missile capabilities, contingency plans for biological attacks on major cities, communication protocols for nuclear submarine commanders. One folder, labeled Operation Dragon Tempest, detailed cyber warfare strategies against China's military networks, ironically discussing vulnerabilities similar to those Jonathan just exploited. He read deployment schedules for chemical weapon response teams, satellite surveillance tasking orders for Iraq, briefings about Russian nuclear stockpile security that even Congress hadn't seen. A 15-year-old in Miami knew more about America's defense posture than most generals. The most sensitive find came on September 18th. Email threads between DTRA, Director Jay Davis, and Secretary of Defense William Cohen discussing the agency's $298 million budget for cooperative threat reduction, the program securing loose nuclear weapons in former Soviet states. The emails contain locations of vulnerable warhead storage facilities in Kazakhstan, transport schedules for weapons-grade uranium from Ukraine, names of Russian scientists being recruited to prevent them from selling expertise to Iran. Jonathan read about Operation Sapphire, where America secretly airlifted 600 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium from Kazakhstan to prevent theft. These weren't historical documents. They described operations happening right now, while Jonathan watched from his bedroom. Yet Jonathan never sold, leaked, or weaponized this information. He created a folder called Pentagon Trophies and locked it with 256-bit encryption. On his IRC channel, he bragged obliquely, "I could start World War III with what I know." Another hacker challenged him to prove it. Jonathan posted a single sentence from a classified memo, redacting everything except the classification marking. TS//SI//NOFORN//ORCON. Top secret. Special intelligence. No foreign nationals. Originator controlled. The channel went silent. Everyone understood. Comrade had penetrated the highest levels of American defense. But how long could a teenager keep such dangerous secrets? Who else might be watching these same networks? October 29, 1999. DTRA. Security analyst Rebecca Foster noticed data anomalies in the Dulles router logs. Subtle but consistent patterns suggesting packet duplication. She ran a trace. Someone had been siphoning their entire data stream for 10 weeks. Foster's report triggered Flashpoint Alpha, the Pentagon's highest cybersecurity alert. Within hours, investigators from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and FBI Cyber Division converged on DTRA headquarters. The evidence suggested a sophisticated operation, custom malware, careful operational security, no obvious attribution markers. Russia's SVR, China's Third Department, Iran's emerging cyber units. But nobody suggested checking Miami high schools. The investigation team, led by FBI Special Agent Mark Anderson, traced the intrusion through 17 proxy servers across 9 countries. Each hop deliberately chosen to frustrate legal jurisdiction, Russia to China to Brazil to Romania. But Jonathan made one mistake. He occasionally connected directly when testing exploits, believing brief connections wouldn't be logged. On November 14th, investigators found it. 3 seconds of direct connection from IP 24.93.41.106, registered to Bell South customer Robert James of Pinecrest, Florida. Cross-referencing with NASA's investigation revealed the same IP accessing Marshall Space Flight Center systems in June. The ghost had a name. Jonathan James, age 16, student at South Miami Senior High School. December 8, 1999. The FBI placed Jonathan under surveillance. Agents watched him bike to school, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, return home by 3:15 p.m. every day. They monitored his internet traffic, now mostly gaming and homework research, as if sensing the investigation closing in. Agents interviewed his teachers, who described a brilliant but withdrawn student. His IQ tested at 159, perfect scores in computer science, but failing English and history from absence. One teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, mentioned Jonathan once fixed the school's entire network during lunch break after administrators locked themselves out. "He did in 20 minutes what our IT contractor couldn't do in 2 days," she said. The FBI realized they weren't chasing a criminal mastermind or foreign operative. They were pursuing a gifted child who treated national security like a video game. The arrest team assembled on January 26, 2000 at 4:30 a.m. 15 agents, 3 local police units, and 1 cybercrime specialist from Carnegie Mellon University brought in to preserve digital evidence. They'd planned for armed resistance, elaborate security systems, and possible destruction of evidence. Instead, they found a suburban house with a broken porch light and newspapers piling up. Agent Anderson gave the signal at 5:47 a.m. The ram hit the door, unlocked. They rushed Jonathan's bedroom to find him exactly as expected, seated at his computer, headphones on, typing code. He didn't even hear them enter until Anderson tapped his shoulder. Jonathan turned around slowly, saw the guns and badges, and said simply, "I wondered when you'd show up." The evidence seizure lasted 4 hours. Agents cataloged 13 hard drives, 271 CD-ROMs, 44 floppy disks, 3 laptops, 2 desktop towers, 1 Sharp Wizard OZ750 containing encrypted password lists. Jonathan's password notebook, the spiral one from his desk drawer, contained handwritten details of 89 successful intrusions, including Ford Motor Company, Lockheed Martin, and the Miami-Dade School District. But the most damning evidence came from Jonathan himself. During interrogation, he provided a complete technical breakdown of his methods, walking agents through exploits they didn't know existed. Agent Anderson later testified, "He taught us more about our vulnerabilities in 6 hours than our security audits found in 6 years." Why did Jonathan confess so completely? What drove him to cooperate with the very system he'd humiliated? September 21st, 2000. The Southern District of Florida's federal courthouse in Miami. Jonathan stood before Judge Barry Garber wearing his father's oversized suit, looking younger than his 16 years. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christopher Clark presented the charges. 2 counts of juvenile computer crime carrying maximum sentences of 10 years each. The prosecution emphasized unprecedented factors. First minor to breach Department of Defense networks, youngest person to access classified nuclear defense information, total damages exceeding $1.7 million. But Clark also noted Jonathan's cooperation. His confession prevented potentially years of investigation costing millions more. The courtroom held NASA engineers, DTRA officials, Jonathan's parents, and 3 teenagers from his computer science class who came to support their imprisoned folk hero. Judge Garber delivered a sentence that would define cybercrime prosecution for the next decade. 6 months in federal juvenile detention, 3 years probation, banned from recreational computer use until age 18, 500 hours of community service teaching computer literacy to seniors, written apologies to NASA and the Department of Defense. But Garber added an unusual provision. Jonathan would brief federal security teams about his methods, essentially becoming an unwilling consultant to the agencies he'd violated. "You have a gift," Garber told Jonathan, "that you chose to abuse. This sentence aims to redirect that gift toward constructive purposes." Jonathan's response surprised everyone. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to prove it could be done." Federal Detention Center, Miami. Jonathan served his time in Cell Block J with 6 other juvenile offenders, drug dealers, car thieves, 1 attempted murderer. The hacker who breached the Pentagon couldn't check email. He taught math to illiterate cellmates, fixed the guards' computers during supervised sessions, wrote 47,000 words about social engineering and human vulnerability in networks. His essay, Trust Architecture, Why Humans Are Always the Weakest Link, became required reading at the NSA's National Cryptologic School. Prison letters from his father contained coded messages in Pascal. Small programs that printed "I love you" when compiled. Jonathan saved everyone. Upon release on March 19, 2001, Jonathan faced a changed world. The dot-com bubble had burst. 9/11 was 6 months away, about to transform cybersecurity from curiosity to national priority. The Patriot Act would soon make his crimes federal terrorism charges. But Jonathan's immediate challenge was simpler: living without computers. He worked at Radio Shack, selling technology he couldn't touch. Customers occasionally recognized his name from news stories. "Aren't you the kid who hacked NASA?" He'd smile and change the subject. The story should end here. A reformed hacker serves time, learns lesson, becomes productive citizen. But Jonathan James's tale has one more chapter. In 2007, when hackers breached TJX companies and stole 45 million credit card numbers, investigators immediately suspected Jonathan despite no evidence. The pressure, surveillance, and assumption of guilt triggered something. On May 18, 2008, Jonathan James took his own life at age 24, leaving a note. "I have no faith in the justice system. Perhaps my actions will send a stronger message to the public." The teenager who exposed America's digital vulnerabilities became a casualty of the very system he'd tried to improve through disclosure. His legacy lives in every security patch, every penetration test, every recognition that a curious kid with a modem can topple giants. But there's one detail I haven't told you. Remember that Pentagon folder Jonathan encrypted? Pentagon trophies? The FBI never cracked it. Somewhere on a seized hard drive in an evidence locker sits classified defense information protected by a dead teenager's password. The agency that protects America's nuclear arsenal was outsmarted by a 15-year-old. And even in death, Jonathan kept their secrets. His story would inspire a new generation of teenage hackers, each one younger and bolder than the last. 20 years later, another teenager would shock the world by hijacking the Twitter accounts of Barack Obama, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates simultaneously, while the entire internet watched. His name was Graham Clark, but online they called him Plugwalk Joe. At just 17, he pulled off the most audacious social media hack in history. Want to see how a kid from Tampa made the world's most powerful people tweet whatever he wanted? Watch the story of the teen who hacked Twitter. It's even crazier than Jonathan 1.